Well, hi everybody and welcome. And I'm happy that you're joining us on this very, very special holiday that is coming for two religions next week. My name is Nimrod Avraham-May, and I'm the creator of God's Gang. I'm very honored and humbled to have these amazing people here on this live discussion. So, with your permission, can you briefly introduce yourself? Let's start with you, Brandon.
Thank you. My name is Brandon Jones. I am an ordained pastor, and I've been ordained since 2011. And I am a pastor at large at this time, meaning that I can exhibit my gifts and share a message of hope to all, but I'm not a part of a specific congregation at this time.
Thank you so much.
Hi. I am a Rabbi Shlomo Chen. I am a rabbi in Tel Aviv, the beautiful city. And I am a person of faith that tries to bring God to everyone, tries to create connectivity between everyone. So I hope we can do a lot of that on our fun live video today.
Thank you, Rabbi Shlomo. And with us also a special guest, Mekye.
Hello, everyone. Again, thank you, Nimrod, for having me on your show. I'm Imam Mekye. I am the founder and CEO of Interfaith Library Incorporated. Interfaith Library is a interfaith organization, multi-faith coalition that believes in the collective word of the collectiveness of the divine words that God has presented to humanity. Interfaith Library is a repository of anything and everything that's religious. You get a chance, and you can stop in for yourself, interfaithlibrary.com. This platform is beautiful for me because it allows me to show that there is a shared value that we all, as Muslim Christians and Jews, share during this upcoming holiday.
Thank you very much, Imam Mekye. Abdus, Salaam. I have some questions for you, and I'm very excited to hear what you have to say. Can you share a brief explanation of what Hanukkah and Christmas represents in your respective faiths? Brandon, Pastor Brandon.
Thank you. Yeah, for Christians, Christmas represents the birth of Christ. And it's known as the advent of Christ. So this anticipation and this celebration around the joy of his birth and the promise of salvation and the hope that he brought to all humanity.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Shlomo.
So Hanukkah has really two messages that echo throughout the ages. Is number one is the fact that the Jewish people got an autonomy again for 200 years, that we were able to push away the darkness of attacks and people that tried to shut the light of the menorah in the Beit HaMikdash, and us relighting it again and representing God and love and hope in this world. And the second one is really the light and the darkness, and that's a constant battle that we fight till today, I think, in all religions, is being able to push away the darkness with great light and not with more darkness.
Thank you. How significant is it that these two holidays are celebrated on the same day this year? Is it rare that it happens? Shlomo.
So for them to start on the same date, meaning Christmas is one day, but Hanukkah is 8 days. So it happens a lot that they they exist together, but not on the first day. That the messaging in the first day, the opening shot is, we want to spread light. And that is very unique, because I think that that's one of the greatest things that we have in this time, is when we're in winter and it's cold and it's dark outside, for all faiths to come together and spread a light of hope. I think that's a very, very big deal for all of us.
Beautiful. Brandon, would you like to add your perspective?
I'd love to. Yeah. So, in Christianity, one of the other aspects of Christmas that we love is the fact that there was a meteorological phenomenon that led wise men to Christ. And so it was a very special moment, and timing had to line up appropriately for many different things. Christ as well, before he was born, his parents were under attack and chased by King Herod to try to interfere with him coming into the world. And so, timing had to line up specifically to bring that hope into the world. And I think that this timing is an opportunity for us, like our rabbi here has said, the timing is lined up for us to share that hope, to share that collective message of light for the world, and to come together and to get rid of some of all of the darkness and the division that plagues us right now.
Hope is a very strong word. So for those of you who may not be familiar, what are the key messages of Hanukkah?
So Hanukkah, for me, I remember as a kid, is an interesting thing. We play with a dreidel on Hanukkah. We spin it. And one of the impacts I think that Hanukkah brought, different than other, I would say, more modern day holidays in Judaism, like Purim and things like that, is the interference of God in this world. Is that sometimes we forget, we become haughty and proud, and we forget that God is impacting us at every single moment in our life. And suddenly, when a huge empire comes to fight a small nation that could barely defend itself, and because they came with that name of God, Mila Hashem Elai, as Matityahu yelled out, is we're not here to fight, but we're here to fight God and love and hope into this world. So I think that the dreidel, my rabbi once told me, is we spin it from on top, because there's someone spinning the dreidel all the time. That's part of the idea of the dreidel. It's not something that comes from, it's not us, even though we fight with our swords and things like that, but it's a message of God, that God is spinning the dreidel to make us all understand that we're part of the game of this world, of bringing him into this world.
And from a Christian perspective, Pastor Brandon.
Yeah, so, Christmas, we give gifts. It's a big commercial holiday, but for us, it symbolizes something very special. God did not decide to withhold his gift from us. He gave us the gift of his son. And another aspect of gift giving is that those wise men who came from afar, guided by a light, they did bring gifts to the baby Savior. And we offer gifts to each other to commemorate the gifts that Christ was given on that day of his birth. And the other piece is, it was dark, it was cold, and there were shepherds who were abiding in that time. And, there was a commotion, and angels came, and that's where we get the song, Hark the Herald Angels Sang, because they gave a message of, do not be afraid in this darkness. Do not be afraid, because there's something happening, and it is a good thing. It is good news, and it is a news of comfort and joy and goodwill toward all men.
Beautiful, thank you. And how do themes of light, hope, and miracles resonate in both traditions? Are there any shared values, you think, between these two holidays? Maybe Mekye, can you comment on this from an interfaith perspective?
Well, I think, and I appreciate having a little say in this, but I think, in the general concept, I like you said, the word hope is really powerful. In one of the tenets of Islam, when we open our prayer, we say, God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim, which means compassionate and merciful. And one of the things I think universally as faith-based community as a whole, I can speak mostly like in the Quran, God doesn't necessarily address us as Christian, Muslim, or Jew. The word is Nasara for the Christians, the Yahud for the Jewish, and Muslims for those who practice Islam in the common simplicity. But I guess the thing that resonates, and he says, when he calls the collective of all of his creations, he says, Ya ayyuhalladhina aminu, O you who believe. And then there's a criteria that is established for that faith-based community. And once that that criteria has been established, then the community now doesn't become separated, it becomes one. And one of the important features, if I may have an extra second to expound on this, is that when he talks about the believers, like I said, he lays a condition down. And during that time, yes, there were differences in the Christian community, the Jewish community, and the Islamic community, but we all believed in the one God. We all did charity. We all made pilgrimage. We all prostrated, or in our own way. We all gave worship. So I think this is, when we're talking about an interfaith movement or interfaith message, what do we unite on when it comes to the Word of God, instead of those things that keep us divided? I like what the rabbi and the pastor have said about light and darkness. And Nimrod, me and you talk about this all the time. It's that energy. When we let that dark energy in, then bad things happen. When we let that light in, good things are possible. Is everybody here?
Nimrod, you're on
muted,
mute.
Nimrod. Yeah.
Sorry about that. So shared connections and interfaith dialogue. In what ways do holidays like Hanukkah and Christmas bring people of different faith closer together? Rabbi Shlomo.
So my esteemed colleagues here have said it, and I think that it's just something that we need to reiterate as human beings. I think there's a very fundamental question that we always have to ask ourselves: are we trying to find the common denominators? Are we trying to find the connection? Are we trying to find the things that bring us together? Or are we trying to look at the differences? Because there's always differences, right? Even in a family, every sibling grows up a bit different and thinks in a different way and all that, but they're all from the same family. And I think that part of what these holidays represent is exactly that, is let's pause for a second. We do live in dark times when there's a lot of war raging in the world, and there's a lot of economical problems and challenges and family values that are being challenged and many, many other things like that. But when the three religions and their leaders, bless all their souls, should come with that messaging of light and come with that messaging of, we want to create a change, not just because we think we're better, but because we all have the same values, like the Imam said, is of charity, of giving, of being a part, of believing, of having hope. Those things are fundamental, I think, and they are the most connecting point out of everything. So we just have to emphasize that connecting point.
Mm-hmm. And what would you have to say about it? What would you like to say about it, Pastor Brandon?
Yeah, thank you. 100% agreement. And I think that one thing that's important is we're having this beautiful conversation here, and as men of different faiths offer explanations for what we believe and why we believe these things and why we worship and celebrate in the ways that we do during this time. All we can say is, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We're talking about love. We're talking about light. We're talking about sharing a message of hope for the world and coming together through differences. None of us can listen to those ideals and think, well, I don't think I agree with that. We must. We all agree that, we're seeking out a connection to the one true God, and we're seeking out to share hope and love to our fellow man. And that brings us together.
So how can moments like these, when two major holidays coincide, be used to foster interfaith understandings and dialogues? Imam Mekye.
Wow, and I was hoping you would ask me that question.
I felt.
I really did, because the pastor said something that was wonderful. We have to, okay, what do we collectively bring to the table, and not just this moment where these two holidays come together, but like every day, because these two holidays, and like you said, in the Jewish tradition, we have 8 days and in the Christian tradition, you have this one day. But what about those other days? What does it really mean? And I think collectively, when we look at our faiths and our walk, first of all, as the rabbi said, we're leaders. in our own way. And it's not just because of some degree or some position or title that was given to us by our institutional overhead. But, what does this mean? It means, one, we have an opportunity to establish dialogue, interfaith dialogue. This is why Interfaith Library was created from the get-go, a safe place for everyone to come congregate, share, and don't feel like they're going to be attacked. Two, we can create educational programs that allow for this communication to happen. Three, physical examples, and in the Jewish culture, they do it all the time, especially Christian cultures too. Community services. This is where that charity comes in. These are where activism comes from. Emphasizing common values. I think the rabbi mentioned that. What do we have in common instead of what we are different from? Addressing extremisms. Those extremisms is what's like creating this darkness. Encouraging empathy. And lastly, if we live in a time with social media. How can we positively use these mediums to get these messages out?
So actually, it's a great start for my next question to you, Imam Mekye. Do you have any personal or communal examples of interfaith celebrations that highlights unity and respect? And I think you mentioned some in your earlier answer.
Well, actually, we do. And for those who may or may not be familiar, in Islam, we have two big traditions that come twice a year. We have what we call them Eids. They're festivals where we don't necessarily celebrate our messengers' date of birth or things like these, but these are significant holidays. But my personal, to answer, if you're asking about a personal, the last few years, the members of Interfaith Library, regardless of their faith, we would go and do community work on Christmas Day. In fact, the Sisterhood of Salaam Shalom is a congregation of Muslim sisters and Jewish sisters that come together. And a few years ago, we started feeding people of need around the country and food, like food banks or community centers. And I think we started doing that about 6 years ago. And that's one of my favorite events every year. And it's sad that us men, and since we're on this platform, we have to figure a way to do this, because how is the women beating us to this? The Sisterhood of Salaam Shalom was a great concept. What about the Brotherhood of Salaam Shalom? What about the Brotherhood of Muslim, Christian, and Jewish brothers, a brotherhood? So one of us or somebody in here, if they're listening in the audience or they're here in this platform, come on, brothers, let's get together and make the world a better place. Don't let the women outdo us in these
Sons
times.
of Abraham, let's get together.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful message. Thank you so much. What lessons can we learn about peace, unity, and shared humanity from these two holidays, Pastor Brandon?
Yeah, we have a lot to learn. Again, the Israelites were under attack and were able to regain autonomy. The Christians were under attack in the early stages of starting Christianity. And, we overcame those things through rededicating our temples and our lives to our faith. And through, praising and worshiping God through Christ. This is how we overcame in those historic moments. Right now, we have to learn that lesson all over again. It's like, how do we rededicate our faiths to the message of hope and unity? How do we rededicate our religions to that? And personally, how do we rededicate our lives? I think it starts on a personal level with having these types of conversations. So many of us have friends who, practice Islam, friends who are Jewish within the Christian faith, speaking specifically for Christians. We have friends who are from these different backgrounds, and we're not having these conversations. We have to rededicate ourselves to unity through having these conversations to understand we're not that different, you know. And I want to say this, I want to make sure I say this before we're done, but John chapter 10 says that Jesus celebrated Hanukkah, you know, and so I think that is incredibly important to remember, is that Hanukkah was a part of Jesus's upbringing, of his tradition, and we share so much. Those conversations are critical to understanding how much we are the same.
Amazing. And Rabbi Shlomo, what lessons can we learn also from a Jewish standpoint?
So I agree 100% with the pastor. I think I would only emphasize one more point, is that sometimes I think we're so scared of having the conversations because for so many years we were educated that we're so different. Or sometimes the differences make us feel threatened. But in my life coaching hat that I have as a rabbi many times, is usually when you feel threatened from something is because you're not confident in your own world. And it's something that you need to be able to really understand and feel. And I think that the more that we are able to understand that, yeah, our paths are not intertwined, or they're not the same path, but they are parallel to each other, and they're shooting and aiming to the same place, exactly the same place. And each person, and like I gave the example before of families, so like my favorite time of the week is Friday night dinners on Shabbos, when I get together with my siblings, and every single one is different. One is a doctor, one is a businesswoman, one is a occupational therapist, and one has her, and each one of us is very different, and we can yell and scream at each other and all that, but at the end of the meal, we're all eating the same food, and we're all a family at the end of the day. And our differences are not our weakness, they're actually our strength, because we have what to offer, and we have what to learn from each person, and we have what to learn and to better ourselves as leaders and as people in these religions, because all of us are leaders at the end of the day. The people that are here on the platform from God's Gang, and everyone that's listening, and everyone that will ever see this, We're all leaders in our own accord, and we should all feel that responsibility, that differences. And yeah, I know that it's hard with the social media. You guys mentioned it before. It's so hard because all we see is Muslims against Jews, or Jews against Christians, and it hurts. And I know that my esteemed colleagues here, we all feel that, right? When we see those YouTube videos, it hurts, because you're like, just talk about the good values, just talk about the light, just look at the light. And if we would just emphasize that, I think that's the messaging. The messaging is focusing on the light, and when you spread light, and when you see light, there's more light. And when you look into darkness, there will only be more darkness. There will only be worse things coming, because darkness spreads darkness. And the more you can spread belief, there's a prayer in Judaism that we say, the Shema Yisrael, that we yell out to Hashem, listen, O nation, God is one. One God, right.
One God.
Right. And that's something that we all yell out. But the messaging there at the end of the prayer, we change between night and day. In day, we say emet ve'yatziv. We are confident of the truth of God, right? And at night, when we say the prayer of night, we say emet ve'emunah. Because when it's darkness, you need to just glue yourself to belief. Emunah is belief. So when it's darkest, we just need to go back to our belief, to our foundations, and then we can find all these common denominators and complement each other rather than fight each other.
And so, if I can just... basically, there are two things that... Yes, please, go ahead.
No. I didn't want to lose a thought, because the rabbi...
I'm now understanding something. You're all leaders. And as leaders, they say with great powers comes great responsibilities.
Absolutely.
Well, I think it was Spider-Man's uncle who said that. So with that being said, as leaders, what role can faith leaders like yourselves play in promoting compassion, understanding across religions? Mekye.
Well, that question probably just segued what I was trying to interpolate, trying not to lose the thought with the great rabbi just said there. If I can use the allegory of his dinner table scenario, the plug Interfaith library or anything, we have to create, especially for someone like myself, when the world has a perception about Islam and the misrepresentations, not just in Islam, but in other religions. I found myself defending Christian theology, especially the Catholic Church. I found myself defending my Jewish brothers and sisters. And, you said, what role can we play in this? Well, Interfaith Library is a role. It was something I physically had to do. When my mother passed away in 2020, she said, to be on this earth and not leave your mark is the greatest transgression against God. He gave us all gifts. And if we come here and we walk through this period of existence and we don't leave a stamp, what did we do? We wasted our time. So with that said, with the dinner table analogy, I'm not plugging, but, for my guests who's listening, check in on interfaithlibrary.com. It's a safe place for us to congregate. And as the rabbi and the great pastor here said, it gives us a chance to talk. And it's a safe place to do it. People will not, and I know you can vouch for this, Nimrod, people will not ridicule you on the library because we don't tolerate it. Your message will not be heard if it's in the darkness, if it's negative. Your message will only be heard if it's positive.
Only speak good words.
Absolutely. It doesn't mean that we have to agree, like the rabbi said. Differences can give us strength, but it's how you respectfully distribute that message.
Thank you. And coming from leadership of Christianity and Judaism, Pastor Brandon, what is the Christian leader role here?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one is education. As I mentioned before, the law of Moses is our foundation. And so educating around the fact that putting a label on something and calling something, Jewish, it is to try to give a categorization, but it's not to try to give a separation. And so I think it's important to educate and understand that us sharing that foundation, it gives us this great platform upon which to be friends. And I think that, having opportunities, intentional opportunities to get together and to share with each other. And, there's great work that we want to do in our communities that we can do together. We don't, it doesn't have to all serve our synagogues or our churches. It can serve the communities, and we can do those things together. I think that that's the most important thing, is education first, and then adhering to our values collectively. We all have very similar values, and we're all starting from a very similar foundational, beginning with the law of Moses. Let's come together and do good works for the community together.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Rabbi Shlomo?
So those are two hard acts to follow, but my only idea that I would add is start talking. I know as a guy that grew up in Israel most of his life, I never interacted, not with Christians and not with Muslims. Again, and the interactions, because thank God Israel is a beautiful democracy, that there's churches and there's mosques and there's synagogues, there's everything there, right? So don't believe anything else that someone tells you. But I never interacted. And only in the last, I would say, 15 years of being a rabbi and being invited to all kinds of conferences and meeting and sitting on panels, I suddenly understood that it's part of just having a conversation, because who doesn't like whiskey, and who doesn't like saying a blessing on the beautiful food that we get from our God, and who doesn't like, who is not dealing with family problems and family values and things like that. So I think just, if you're so scared, you should actually lean into that fear and say, hey, let me go talk to my Christian neighbor, or let me go talk to my Muslim friend from work, or let me get to know my Jewish coworker. All those things, that's how you create connection. It's by conversing, it's by saying. And then if you have things that you're not sure about, that's why you have your rabbis, your pastors, your imams. Go back and say, hey, I spoke to my Jewish friend and he told me this. How does that work in our... It doesn't have to contradict again. And it all starts from just creating a connection.
And Thank you so much. So I want to I would say, closing reflections. What is one thing you hope people will take away from this conversation about shared connections and traditions? And I would start with you, Imam Mekye.
Well, I again segue into a response I wanted to say, and I'll end on this note. The rabbi just used a word in there that's really significant, and I think we all can hold on to that, is fear. Start the communication. The communication isn't being had because it's fear. And I remember my mom said something before she passed. Fear is fake evidence appearing real. I don't know if I have anything else to add on that. Fear is fake evidence appearing real. And we got to get to a point where we're no longer talking about stuff, we're actually doing stuff. And a song I just recorded not too long ago. Don't talk about a sermon, be the sermon. I'd rather see a sermon than to hear one. And I'll close on that.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Shlomo.
So I would love to end with a story. One of the stories that has inspired me the most, and I think it's so relevant for now, but at the beginning of the 20th century, there was a student in Austria in university. And his professor, that was a total atheist, was ranking and bullying all the Jewish, Christian, and Muslim students that were in university there. And he's like, "Oh, look what your God did. He did the Inquisition. He did this." And he started ranking and really ripping into them, and with his intellect. And he was very, very smart. And one student raised his hand and he said, "Professor, I want to ask you a question." So he said, "Okay." He said, "Can you define what cold is?" And the professor started trying to explain it with physics and math and all that. He's like, "No, cold is the absence of heat." And then the student said, "I have another question. Can you define darkness?" And he's like, "Yeah, when the particles don't meet, so it doesn't reflect into your eye." And he starts trying to, and again, the student stops and says, "No, darkness is the absence of light." And then he said to him, "And professor, what is evil? Evil is the absence of God." Okay. And the tradition, the story ends that student was Albert Einstein. So a genius of physics on his own accord, but he's sending a message to all of us that even a person that is so into science and physics and all that, he understood that when we take God out of the picture, that's where evil starts happening. And when we take light, that is God, that he brings us love and brings us hope and all that out of the picture, that's where we're creating darkness. And I think that what we can take from here, from God's gang in general and anything, is that we all want to bring that light back. We all want to bring God. God is good, right? It's in the word. It's in good.
We don't need to bring anything that is already here. We just need to apply. For me, the word is trust. We need, and it starts with trusting ourselves and trusting God. And Pastor Brandon, I would love to hear a closing word from you.
This conversation has been incredible. And I hope that people who watch this take away is we are the example in this moment. This is a small example of what we're trying to push for you all to do. This conversation has been great. I would love to, I could have this conversation for hours and hours, and over whiskey or over dinner. And this is what we have to do. Find moments with your friends and coworkers and others that you meet who have differences. Put the fear aside, like we've all said. Have the conversation. You don't have to just harp on the differences. Harp on the similarities first. And then you can get into the differences and understand that those differences are really still just trying to point to the central truth, like the rabbi just said, that when you remove God from a conversation and from a situation, that's where evil can come in. And all of our structures, all of our beliefs are trying to point to that central truth, that God needs to be in the forefront, that God needs to be in the center of everything that we do. And so I hope that what's taken away is this was safe, this was positive, and this was filled with love. And you can do the exact same thing.
Amazing. First of all, I want to thank you all for joining this conversation. I'm very emotional because basically it's the first time that we all have this gathering, and in the future we will have more and more faiths coming to listen to these beautiful words. We also have some questions coming from the audience, so with your permission, I would like to address these questions, and I would address them from God's King's perspective. We were asked if there is one God or many, and I would like to share my personal experience and my personal findings after um, doing an amazing 17 years of trying to figure out this thing called existence, this thing called the universe, divinity, energy, quantum entanglements. So for me, God, if somebody asks if I would send the smartest person all across the universe, and I would tell him, listen, it's a very complicated thing to understand, and I'm a simple person, and my mind can grasp this infinity. Can you please describe what it is in 2 words, just 2 words, and please tell me if you would agree with me or not. If I would take the smartest person, I would tell you I'm limiting you to just 2 words. For some reason, I know that these 2 words resonates very well with Bob Marley. One love. So yes, I believe there's one God, and I believe that God is love, and this is what it expects from us to be. So basically, climbing on the Jacob's ladder, ascending with our consciousness, with our frequencies, with our belief. The only place we need to go is to be love. And with love, we can conquer and we can overcome any differences and every challenges that we might have or face in this world. And I think this world now is in a moment in time where love is the most important energy that needs to be running in order for humanity to thrive together, to be successful. And I know there's so many shared values and shared connections that can be found with the religions, the different religions, compassion and kindness and truthness. And this is everything that we're trying to bring to this world with the God's Gang project, company, and series. And it's really, I think we have a very unique mission that we all took on ourselves. And I want to thank you so much for being a part of the God's Gang family. And I would like to address our audience and tell them that we're preparing an amazing surprise for you. I know it's been taking us a bit too long to release new episodes and new stories, but 4 new episodes are coming towards the ends of January and all through February, and it's nothing like you've seen so far. And yes, they're going to be joined by another faith. So they're going to be joined by most of our fans already know. It's a Buddhist character. So they're going to be 5, but I don't want to do any spoilers here. You can check our social channels because we release very frequently things about the new coming episodes. We like to tease you. And with that being said, I'm inviting everybody to subscribe to our channels. There's a small bell on the YouTube channel. Please ring it so you'll be updated with the latest that's coming here. And again, I'm very grateful for this conversation. I'm humbled. I'm honored. I'm excited. I'm very emotional. I think it resonates with the frequencies here. So I'm inviting everybody to join us. And don't forget, sometimes in order to bring the light, we need to kick some butts in darkness. And that's going to be done in a very nice way. So again, thank you everybody here Thank you, Imam Mekye Abdus Salaam. Thank you, Pastor Brandon Jones. Thank you, Rabbi Shlomo Cohen. Hey, thank you for being a part of this. And I wish everybody happy holidays, peace, unity, hope, coexistence, and trust. Please
Amen.
remember to trust him. Amen for that.
Amen.
I would represent Hinduism, and I would also say namaste. So thank you so much, everybody.
Thank
Let's
you.
talk soon.
Thank you.
Bye
A lot of
bye.
light.